morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
Well, if you were with us last week, you'd have heard a little bit of the history of BC's famous gang ranch. And it goes way back to 1863. For a long time, it was known as the biggest cattle ranch in North America, but I think, as I mentioned last week, since the latest acquisitions by the Douglas Lake Ranch, they may be a little bigger now. The famous JH brand, registered by Jerome Harper, is still in use, and this week, John Rudiger shares some of his experience as an owner of that huge operation, and also how it was being back in the saddle after having a hip replacement.
And we rode 8 hours a day for three days, and it never bothered me at all.
Baxter Black is all pumped up and waiting to talk about his great idea to help promote the pork industry.
Imagine two obviously happy, environmentally conscious grandfather types appearing on television, each holding a smoked ham, singing the praises of pork.
And on the Rangeland News,
we've got specific things that we want to address, particularly with Canada and with Mexico.
Things might not be looking very good for the North American Free Trade Agreement. That's one of the stories we'll cover today. And the great voice of Bill Barwick graces the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight this week.
In his boots and bandana and big hat and jeans, it was something she couldn't explain.
And Bill Barwick's all set to open the show with one of his great songs in just a second or two. On the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, I'll have some advice for a rider, and it's probably not what she wants to hear. John Rudiger shares some of his memories of the gang ranch after Bill Barwick and the sale of another ranch.
They're selling the land I grew up on. The home of my youth is no more. But the lessons I learned growing up on the ranch are with me as part of my core. Close all your gates tight behind you. Feed your ponies before you take rest. Each spring calves a new kind of lesson. Each blizzard will measure your best. Work hard from the first ray of daylight. Your best work is yet to be done. Your word and your hand make a contract. Your life and your living are one. Your life and your living are one. Well, a dull tool is hardly worth having. And God, well, He's in charge of the rain. The water's more value here than money. And the whole world's in a bushel of grain. Well, they've sold the ranch I grew up on, but its legacy lives in me yet. Be true to yourself, ride good horses. Value the wisdom of sweat. Work hard from the first ray of daylight. Your best work is yet to be done. Your word and your hand make a contract. Your life and your living are one. Your life and your living are one. Your life and your living are one. Your life and your living are one.
Bill Barwick, just a fantastic entertainer and performer and a wonderful guitar player, and just such a shame he suffered a massive stroke in 2015, and sadly he doesn't perform live anymore. Well, when John Rudiger and his group took over the gang ranch, the weaning weights of their first calf crop was somewhere around 300 pounds. So they went to work culling some bulls.
We took and sold all the bulls off, except one longhorn that we couldn't get. It took us 2 years to get him captured.
How'd you finally do that?
Well, the cowboys kept at it, and they finally, 2 of them roped him at the same time, and because as soon as you roped him with one, he charged you.
Oh, yeah.
He had quite a challenge there.
They finally did get him captured.
Yeah.
That must have been quite a day.
Yeah, it was quite a day. They also, at that time, we inherited a herd of buffalo on there. And between the Fish and Wildlife and we had quite a problem what they were doing, because they said we couldn't run them there because we didn't have right permits to run it. And they wouldn't give us a permit to run them. They just wanted us to get rid of them. Well, we really didn't want them neither.
Yeah.
But, well, we thought we had one idea of doing is selling hunts. And so we sold a few hunts. And we could get pretty good money for a hunt out of guys out of New York and out of the States. But that didn't sit well with the Fish and Wildlife. And so we decided, well, there's another way we could do is some of these guys that wanted experience working on the ranch, out of the States, they might want to pay to work on the ranch. And so we charged them for the experience to come and work on the ranch, and their job was to go shoot a buffalo.
And you had some takers for this.
Oh yes, we had a few takers with it. We didn't want to publicize it too much because we were trying our best to get along with Fish and Wildlife.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So whatever became of the buffalo? Did they eventually get removed? Or?
Yes, I finally got them sold and we got them shipped out. Actually, 88 is when I got bought out. And the fall and late fall, well, the end of the year actually, when my deal closed. But prior to that, we got them sold and shipped out.
Well, we have much more from John and a brand new song from an Oklahoma cowboy when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Quite a number of older cowboys I know and have ridden with were having problems with their hips, and they all, I know, were riding in pain and pretty much suffered in silence, kind of the cowboy way. But I watched, especially after they'd get down from 2 or 3 hours in the saddle, and could see that they were pretty stove up. But several of them that I know of had hip replacement surgery. In fact, I've been riding with one fella this fall, and the change I see is amazing. He's even off his horse and opening the gates for the younger guys. And John Rudiger had that experience.
Did you get to spend much time horseback in some of that gang ranch country when you were involved?
I did a certain amount of horseback riding back in there, and I traveled a lot around there with my van, wherever I could get. And then I saw a lot, almost all of it, quite a bit by air, because with my plane, getting there, I'd always do some checking over it, and when I left to come home, I'd do some more checking, and while I was there, I would go up and do lots of checking too.
We've got a neighbor who we used to ride with quite a bit, and he had a hip replacement. Must be 10 years ago or more now. And up until for the last 2 or 3 years before the operation, riding was absolutely agony for him. But he loved the cattle and he loved to be able to ride. But since he's had the operation, he can ride hours and hours and hours and it doesn't bother him. I'm just wondering how your experience that way went.
Well, I had my hip done just 2 years ago. New Year's Eve was my second year since I had it. And it was great. I woke up out of the operation. I had no pain. And the operation was at 2 in the afternoon. At 7 o'clock they had me up going to the washroom.
Wow.
And the next day I was on crutches going to therapy, and I was 5 days before I got out of the hospital. And I got home and I just kept lots of exercise, and it wasn't long before I was outside and going around. I wasn't doing a lot of work yet, but within 3 months I was on a horse and did a little bit of riding, not very much. But by the September long weekend, I was out to the mountains for the long weekend with a bunch of other people, and we rode 8 hours a day for three days, and it never bothered me at all.
Man, isn't that great?
Yeah, and it's I had a limp for a while, but most of that was habit, not by that it would really hurt.
Right.
And I catch myself once in a while limping, but it's not because it hurts. It just catches you sometimes.
Well, we did this interview sometime around, I think it was about 1998, and I asked John for his view at that time on the next 10 years for the cattle industry. And it'll be interesting to hear what he said and compare it to what actually happened. That's coming up. And I've got a nice new CD from Donnie Poindexter this week. Thought you'd enjoy this title track called Cowboy Life.
It's up in the morning with sleep in your eyes. It's flapjacks and coffee before the sunrise. It's jingle and saddle right through the day. Cowboy life, hard work for short pay. But I wouldn't trade it for silver or gold, or live in the city for treasures untold. Out on the wagon, it's where I'll stay. Cowboy life, hard work for short pay. My slicker's all frazzled, my saddle's all worn. I've been a poor man since the day I was born. Well, I ride for pound, 6 bits a day. Cowboy life, hard work for short pay. But I wouldn't trade it for silver or gold, or live in the city for treasures untold. Out on the wagon is where I will stay. Cowboy life, hard work for short pay. It's hot in the summer, in the winter it's cold. The cattle are rangy, the ponies are old. The chuck wagon's busted, bogged down in the clay. Cowboy life, hard work for short pay. But I wouldn't trade it for silver or gold, or live in the city for treasures untold. Out on the wagon is where I will stay. Cowboy life, hard work for short pay. Cowboy life, hard work for short pay.
And now back to the conversation with John Rudiger.
John, this has just been fascinating. You know, we could sit here, I bet we could talk for about another 5 or 6 hours about the business and the life and everything else. But just before I let you go, what do you see looking down into the next 10 years for, for the Charolais industry and for the commercial cattle industry in Canada? In your view, how do things look?
Well, I guess just to backtrack a little bit on the gang ranch that I wanted to mention to you was that first calf crop was 300 pounds. Of course, they were bred back, and so we had a second calf crop coming with the same thing. Although we increased the weaning weights a little bit because we bought some cows that were bred to Charolais, so that brought our average up a little bit. By 88, when that calf crop, when we sold it, we broke the 600-pound range.
Wow.
And all we really did was use Charolais bulls, cull the cows, and we didn't preg. We preg checked the first year. After that, we never preg checked. But what we did do is numbered all the cows, and so that we could check which ones were bulling and pull those cows. Anything that didn't, at branding time, didn't have a calf, we pulled them. And boy, you don't have to pay a lot of high price things. You can do some simple things to really get the job done the same way.
Just about double your gross revenue per cow by doing that.
That's right, yeah.
So still to come, John's predictions on the next 10 years in the industry from the time we did that interview. And coming up, Baxter Black's great idea for promoting the pork industry. A real nice song from Dwayne Stewart, the son of famous cowboy troubadour Stu Davis. And then the Rangeland News, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan with a little peek at Duroc or Chardonnay. If your group or association is planning a meeting and are on a thrifty budget, check out Virtual Video Baxter. That's me. I'll video a personalized welcome, then furnish several humorous stories to run between your speakers. Sign books can be used as auction items. We've done rodeos, museums, bull sales, the Conservation Service. Use your imagination. Virtual Video Baxter. Give us a call, 800-654-2550 at baxterblack.com. Pork producers are to be commended. They've worked long and hard to improve the image of pork. For centuries, pigs and fat have been connected at the jowl. Porky, piggish, pig-headed, hoggish, ham-handed, hamstrung, pork barrel, hogwash, boar's nest, pigsty, and pig in a poke are all terms that have become common when wishing to insult someone's appearance or behavior. And I've always admired those resolute, loyal young women who wore the banner proclaiming them pork princess. But when the farmers changed the product, and I mean the pig itself, the market hog, they changed the public's perception of pork as well. I thought the other white meat advertising slogan, a clever tie-in with chicken, was imaginative, and I'm amazed at how well it sunk into the consumer's brain. Of course, when the hog producers named it that, I don't think they ever figured it'd be the same price. But be that as it may, I've been plotting their next piggyback advertising relationship, one that will move them into a new level of sophistication and acceptance. How does this sound? We shall serve no swine before it's time. That's right, friends. National hog farms can become the Ernest and Julio Gallo of pork. Imagine two obviously happy, environmentally conscious grandfather types appearing on television, each holding a smoked ham, singing the praises of pork. We'd see billboards with 30-somethings on a beach somewhere, smiling and toasting each other with a cracklin'. North Carolina would become the Napa Valley of the pig business. People would plan vacations to swine country. They could go by the individual swineries for samples of head cheese, pickled pig's feet, bacon bits, and sausage. On college campuses, faculty would engage in swine and cheese parties. Swine tasting would become an art form. At restaurants, the hamnelier would bring out your entree, cut the first bite using special tongs and a pig sticker, and proffer it to your lips. You would sniff, suck, masticate, savor, and swallow. Excellent, Hervé. It has a certain candor, a frankness that says, I'm from Oklahoma, and proud of it. Haughty, but not coy. A boldness reminiscent of Javelina 55, yet juicy, succulent, stepping into the new millennium while keeping a cloven appendage firmly ensconced. Oh, shut up! Forgive me. I got carried away, but it's not often I can see this clearly into the future. pop the cork on pork. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan. Thanks for listening.
The legendary Sons of the Pioneers, with an unbroken connection back to the beginning with Roy Rogers, Tim Spencer, and Bob Nolan. Up to the present, their wonderful Western harmonies are still honoring those traditions, and their live show is spectacular.
Cool, clear water.
The famous Sons of the Pioneers will be in Edmonton November 20th and 21st in Festival Place in Sherwood Park, and at the Red Deer Memorial Centre, Red Deer, Alberta, Wednesday, November 22nd. For the Red Deer Show, get your tickets at the Black Knight Ticket Inn or by calling 403-755-6226.
Drifting along with the tumbling,
I'm pretty sure many of you can remember the cowboy troubadour Stu Davis. He had a daily radio show in the 50s, hosted several seasons of a great television series with Trail Riding Troubadour, and then Red River Jamboree, and his son Dwayne appeared as a co-host on many of them with his dad. Dwayne's a fine singer and songwriter in his own right, and this one he wrote seems to be a good fit for mid-November.
The elk are coming down from the hills each morning. The winter grazing's better here below. The evening sky last night was like a warning. It's cold outside and looking like early snow. This morning it's cold outside and looking like early snow. Every year this town is getting smaller. The kids can hardly wait to up and go. And now they've closed the high school down forever. It's cold outside and looking like early snow. This morning it's cold outside and looking like early snow. Clouds up over the mountains getting darker every day. As soon as the wind turns westerly, they're bound to head this way. There's been no rain all summer, and all the grass is brown. The rodeo is over, and the circus is leaving town. Another farming family left the valley. They left last night, nobody heard them go. They left the tractor standing in the hayfield. It's cold outside and looking like early snow. This morning it's cold outside and looking like early snow. The elk are coming down from the hills each morning. The winter grazing's better here below. The evening sky last night was like a warning. It's cold outside and looking like early snow. This morning it's cold outside and looking like early snow. It's cold outside and looking like early snow. This morning it's cold outside and looking like early snow.
The news of the rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
Top of page 1, it says there's rising concern about the direction the North American free trade talks are taking. The U.S. Agriculture Secretary didn't even attend round 4. With a little more background, here's Gary Crawford.
Round 4 of the NAFTA renegotiation, Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue told reporters,
Honestly, we've been somewhat disappointed in the first 3 rounds.
Perdue was asked if some thorny agricultural issues will be put on the table in round 4.
That's not my job. That's the U.S. Trade Ambassador's job. And I know Ambassador Lighthouser will do a great job. We'll begin putting issues on the table, though I'm sure that he will. We've got specific things that we want to address, particularly with Canada and with Mexico, but I'll leave that to the ambassador.
Sonny Perdue will not be at the talk. He will be traveling to the UK, then to Italy for the G7 Food and Agricultural Organization meeting, then to Spain. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
The world's major weather forecasters predict a slightly better than 50% chance that La Nina weather pattern will occur this fall and winter. Most prairie farmers and ranchers could see good things happening if the system does materialize, because La Nina systems tend to bring what many people think of as normal prairie winters. That means colder and snowier. Bruce Burnett, Director of Weather and Markets for Glacier Farm Media, says he acknowledged areas of the northern prairies have had less need for snow to replenish soil moisture than do southern regions, but he said if more snow was to happen, it would be generally a positive outcome. A La Nina, as you know, is defined as below average sea surface temperatures throughout the central Pacific region. It can affect worldwide weather patterns, including bringing heavier than normal rain to countries in the western Pacific. The U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Australia's Bureau of Meteorology, and the United Nations World Meteorology Organization all predict a 50 to 55% of La Nina, according to this fall's weather patterns, and if that happens, the effect should carry on into 2018. Jester, an 18-year-old stallion, was discovered dead on the causeway near the bridge in Maryland October the 5th, according to Deborah Darden, superintendent of the Island National Seashore Law Enforcement personnel. They found no visible signs of trauma on the horse's body, and the case of death is presumed to have been severe internal injuries. The driver involved was identified as a 70-year-old woman from Maryland, and she was unhurt in the incident. She said Jester was well known to visitors and staff. He was often one of the first horses people saw when they visited the park. He was a handsome, well-known horse, and he will be missed. And the incident is still under investigation. Idaho has reported its 7th confirmed case of West Nile virus in horses in that state. The Idaho Department of Agriculture said the yearling quarter horse filly, with no vaccination history, began showing signs of the disease in early October. They included facial nerve deficits and incoordination in all 4 limbs, and they said the filly is responding to treatment. Did you know that it's been proven we pay 10 times more attention to negative news than positive news? We are being barraged with negative news on every device. The constant onslaught distorts our perspective on the future, and it can inhibit our ability to make a positive impact. Those are the words of X-Prize founder, medical doctor, and aerospace engineer Peter Diamandis. And he says this isn't about ignoring or minimizing the major issues we still face around the world, but it's about countering our romanticized views of the world in centuries past with real data. Here's a few examples that I pulled out of Peter's blog. Over the last 200 years, the world's gross domestic product has skyrocketed 100-fold. Humankind has never been more prosperous and productive. In September 2017, the government of Finland announced a partnership with MONI to create a digital money system for refugees. The system effectively eliminates some of the logistical barriers to financial transactions, enabling displaced people to participate in the economy and rebuild their lives. Refugees will be able to loan money to friends, receive paychecks, and access funds using prepaid debit cards linked to digital identities on the blockchain without a bank. And just 100 years ago, a child born in India or South Korea was only expected to live to 23. Fast forward to today, and India's life expectancy has tripled, South Korea's life expectancy has quadrupled, and now is higher than in the UK. And last month, a robot dentist in China successfully implanted 3D printed teeth into a female patient's mouth with high precision. And the only human medical staff involvement was to conduct light setup and a pre-test. So imagine when such robots are in every healthcare facility on the planet, delivering service for no more than the cost of electricity. And one more. The U.S. Department of Energy announced in September that utility-scale solar has officially hit its 2020 cost targets, 3 years early, with generation costs of $1 per watt and energy consumption costs of 0.06 per kilowatt hour. Lots of cattle still being hauled to the sale yards this time of year, and in BC you can find a list of livestock haulers, as well as the schedule of up-and-coming sales at www.bclivestock.bc.ca. And you can watch their live auction sales online at that website. Meanwhile, at the Innisfail auction market, things are rolling along with pre-sort sales. Calves are weighed every Sunday for the Monday sale. Regular cattle sales every Wednesday, and 2 horse sales a month. Get the details at InnisfailAuctionMarket.com. That takes us down to the final item. We sure enjoy having the grandkids here at the ranch. While back when Jet was a lot smaller and younger, he loved to play in the puddles around the house in the spring. And Billy had just brought him in to put dry jeans on him after he'd been splashing around in the puddles, and then she sent him back out. And then she heard a noise at the side of the house, so she just hollered out the door, "Are you out there wetting your pants again?" And a voice a little more mature than Jet said, "No, ma'am. I'm just out here reading your meter." And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, a rider might not like the answer I have for her horse problem. You'll hear what it is when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. On the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, a rider has a problem with a horse, and from what she told me, there's only one reasonable answer, and she might not want to hear it. But you will, after another real nice song in a modern West, written and sung by a guy who's been there and done that. Here's Tom Cole.
It's roundup time in the big hills. The steers are all but in. It's been raining now for 3 days, and the creeks are running mean. The boys are getting tired, our grub is getting low, but we made it safe to cow camp, and soon we all go home. I got a letter from Aunt Molly. Granddad's feeling poor, but it's just a cold, there's something. They think it's nothing more. And Betty's jam came through the mail, and it came in just one piece. And Cookie made us something that we could almost eat. Of all the things that could go wrong, none did today. Of all the mishaps that we missed along our way, I think I should be thankful for everything gone right. So you'll hear me say a little prayer in the bunkhouse tonight. I roped a muley yesterday off the green colt Gus gave me. Pulled the rope up under his tail, but somehow we got it free. Sometimes I just wonder as we do our day to day, why so many miracles come our way. Of all the things that could go wrong, none did today. Of all the mishaps that we missed along our way, I think I should be thankful for everything gone right. So you'll hear me say a little prayer in the bunkhouse tonight. And I think I should be thankful for everything gone right. So you'll hear me say a little prayer in the bunkhouse tonight.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
Fall calls for Western wear with a welcome twist from Irvine Tack and Western Wear. Over 70,000 square feet of selection, boots for cowboys and cowgirls, work boots, hikers, and slip-ons. They've got them all. Everything to suit up for the changing season. Jeans, shirts, gloves, hoodies, jackets, and oh yeah, they want me to tell you about the fall decor and collectibles. New arrivals fresh off the wagon almost daily. Irvine Tack and Western, off exit 305 on Highway 2 by Crossfield, open 7 days a week. I've been very fortunate that I get to spend a lot of time with very good horsemen, and being able to ride with folks like Jonathan Field, Miles Kingdon, Cade Mills, Ray Allen, Ryan Conan, and so many good working cowboys, I sometimes assume that the rest of the horse world is as savvy as they are. And from time to time, a horse can even have these top hands scratching their heads. And then I'll get a question that shows me how little most people understand about horses. For example, a lady writes, I have an 11-year-old Appaloosa mare. We got her about 8 months ago. We found out that she used to be a rodeo bucking horse. She goes crazy when you try to put a saddle pad on her. When you finally get the pad and saddle on her, she dances around when you try to mount her. How do you show her that everything is okay? She is also terrified of spray bottles. I'm new with all of this, but I love this horse, and I want her to be comfortable with everything. Can you help? Well, my first response is, if you're new at all of this, what on earth are you doing with this kind of horse? She could be a challenge for a well-experienced trainer or a savvy cowboy in top hand. The question, how do you show her that everything is okay, has no answer. The problem is, when an inexperienced person tries to work with this kind of horse, the odds are the horse will get progressively worse, and the person could easily even get hurt. The first option, in my opinion, would be to find another home for her and replace her with a well-broke, experienced, trusting mount. But the line, I love this horse, is so typical of these situations. And my advice then is, if you're committed not to part with her, is to find a savvy, experienced trainer who has dealt successfully with this kind of horse, and be prepared to spend a long time and a lot of money, and try to learn as much from the trainer as you want your horse to learn. And for Irvine Saddles and Western Wear, that's the Horse Training File. Something our horses really enjoy is that daily feeding of Hoffman's Horse Ration. Keeps them in good shape and looking great too. You can find out more at hoffmanshorseration.com. The legendary Sons of the Pioneers, with an unbroken connection back to the beginning with Roy Rogers, Tim Spencer, and Bob Nolan. Up to the present, their wonderful Western harmonies are still honoring those traditions, and their live show is spectacular.
Cool water, clear water.
The famous Sons of the Pioneers will be in Edmonton November 20th and 21st in Festival Place in Sherwood Park, and at the Red Deer Memorial Centre, Red Deer, Alberta, Wednesday, November 22nd. For the Red Deer Show, get your tickets at the Black Knight Ticket Inn or by calling 403-755-6226.
Drifting along with the tumbling,
Earlier in the interview, I'd asked John Rudiger what he saw for the future of the cattle industry, and that was about 15 years ago.
What do I see in the future for Charolais, or for the beef industry? I guess what I see with the new technology that's here, we're going to see some great changes in the industry. We're going to see the health issue for the meat is really something that's coming in demand, and I think you're going to quality assurance and health insurance of guarantee on the meat to the consumer is a big issue. And with this identification program that's coming in, and I'm positive, like I know that a lot of the cattlemen aren't accepting it too well because they think it's control. But I believe that if right now it's in the cattlemen's hands to come up with a system that'll work. If we can't get a system to work that the cattlemen will accept and do it, the government's going to force us to do it. And that would be terrible, I think, because it would be very inefficient if the government has to do it. Mm-hmm. In Europe, it's all the cattle breeders have to identify the animals before they leave, and they had to do it because of the BSE. We're going to have to do it too. There's lots of research and development that's going on. I think we're going to see how to put certain bloodlines together to be more efficient. And I think our trade barriers with the states are going to come together closer and closer. It's going to take some work, but it's going to be worth it.
Good note to wind up on, John. JR, thank you so much for sharing some of these ideas and these experiences here on the Spirit of the West today.
Well, thank you, Hugh. It's been a pleasure, and we really enjoyed having you here at the Charolais Convention. We were really pleased with the crowd that we did have.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Hugh.
And back to the gang ranch that John, of course, talked about so much. One of the biggest challenges the gang ranch had over the years was getting cattle across the Churn Creek Suspension Bridge. It was built in 1914, and as far as I know, there never was a toll per head for taking cattle across, but there was on a river crossing on the old Chisholm Trail, and here's the story.
We crossed the White Pecos, forded the Nueces, swam the Guadalupe, and followed the Brazos. Red River runs rusty, the Wichita clear. Down on the muddy Brazos, I courted my dear. Sang li-li-li-lee, lend me your hand. Li-li-li-lee, lend me your hand. Li-li-li-lee, lend me your hand. The Trinity, it's muddy, and the Brazos quicksand.
Oh, the fair Angelina runs glossy and gliding. Crooked Colorado runs waving and winding. Slow San Antonio courses the plains. But I'll never walk down the muddy Brazos again.
Singing li-li-li-lee, lend me your hand. Li-li-li-lee, lend me your hand. Li-li-li-lee, lend me your hand. The Trinity, it's muddy, and the Brazos quicksand. There's a ladder of rivers we have to cross. Crossing the mighty Brazos came at a high cost. Too many cowboys, cattle, and horses were lost, so they decided to build that big bridge. They charged a nickel a head on the old Chisholm Trail, driving those longhorns north to the rail. Through the rain, sleet, and the snow and the hail, a nickel a head on the old Chisholm Trail.
In 1868, construction began on the Waco Suspension Bridge across the mighty Brazos River. Colonel John Flint hired Thomas N. Griffith of the John Roebling Company to engineer and build the first suspension bridge west of the Mississippi. The bridge spanned 475 feet, and 3 million bricks were used to build the towers. The first Longhorns crossed on January 1st, 1870. The price for the toll was a nickel a head on the old Chisholm Trail.
Nickel a head on the old Chisholm Trail, driving those Longhorns north to the rail, through the rain, sleet, snow, and the hail. A nickel a head on the old Chisholm Trail.
Coming up, this week's classic Song of the West, sung by an all-star cast, and then Bill Barwick in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Got an all-star cast, some of the best from the world of Western music to do this week's classic Western song. It was actually written on the back of an envelope by Johnny Mercer. When he and his wife were driving across the southern states, he noticed that a lot of the cowboys weren't riding horses. They were driving trucks and cars, and that was in 1935, long before quads and side-by-sides. The biggest hit version of this song was by Bing Crosby and the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra in 1936, but here you go with a whole bunch of famous voices on I'm an Old Cowhand.
I'm an old cowhand from the Rio Grande, but my legs ain't bowed and my cheeks ain't tan. I'm a cowboy who never saw a cow, never roped a steer 'cause I don't know how. I sure ain't fixing to start in now.
Yippee-i-oh-ki-yay.
Oh yeah.
Yippee-i-oh-ki-yay.
And I'm an old cowhand. I come down from the Rio Grande and I learned to ride, ride before I learned to stand. I'm a riding fool who is up to date. I know every trail in the Lone Star State, 'cause I ride this range in a Ford V8. Yippee-i-oh-ki-yay. Yippee-i-oh-ki-yay.
Well, we're old cowhands from the Rio Grande, and we come to town just to hear the band. We know all the songs that the cowboys know about the big corral where the doggies all go, 'cause we learned them all on the radio. Yippee-i-oh-ki-yay. Oh yeah. Yippee-i-oh-ki-yay.
And I'm an old cowhand down from the Rio Grande, where the West is wild, all around the borderland, where the buffalo roam around the zoo, the Indians run up a rug or two, the old Bar X is just a barbecue. Yippee-i-oh-ki-yay. Yippee-i-oh-ki-yay.
I'm a pioneer who began from scratch. I don't bat an eye in a suit or a hat.
Sure.
They don't call me Elmer, they call me Satch.
Yippee-i-oh-ki-yay.
Yippee-i-oh-ki-yay. Oh boy.
Yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay. Yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay. Yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay.
I'm talking.
Yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay.
Yeehaw.
Yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay.
Well, some of those voices, that would be Michael Martin Murphy, Ray Benson from Asleep at the Wheel, and the harmony vocals from Kirsten Harris and Mickey Daniel. Bill Barwick opened for us this week, and he closes the show with a poem called Quiet Old Cowboy.
It was hot for September in Kansas, so he rode into town kind of slow. He stepped down and walked over to where she was working and quietly just said hello. He asked for a cool drink of water, maybe some time in the shade. As they sat there just talking about nothing at all, she knew her decision was made. It was strange how she thought he was handsome. Most folks would have said he looked plain. In his boots and bandana and big hat and jeans, it was something she couldn't explain. His voice was all gravel and thunder, from cigarettes, whiskey, and years. But the words he was using spoke straight to her soul, and they wiped away all of her fears. He was tall, he was tan, he was handsome, and he smiled when she asked him to stay. In only a moment, that quiet old cowboy had stolen her young heart away. She trembled the first time he held her, 'cause she'd fallen in love once before. But wrapped in his arms, she felt safe and secure. She knew what forever was for. In the movies, they ride off in a sunset. In real life, they'd just settle down. And believe it or not, they're still living together on a small place just outside of town. And each night when she lays down beside him and smiles at the peace that they've found, she thinks back and remembers that day in September when her cowboy rode into that town. 'Cause he was tall, he was tan, he was handsome, and he smiled when she asked him to stay. In only a moment, that quiet old cowboy had stolen her young heart away.
Well, I sure hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed putting this together, and I hope you can be right here next week at the same time. Thanks again to our great support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan. Be sure to check Mark's site, bctractorparts.com, and to subscribe to Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine. See cowboycountrymagazine.com or call 1-800-943-7336. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.